Time now for Colts Central Radio. Here's Tyler Brooke and Nate Dunlevy.
This is Nate Dunlevy. I'm here on behalf of my co-host Tyler Brooke, who can't be with me tonight, as we get ready for the first preseason game of the season coming up in just 10 days. We're going to be looking at training camp tonight with Jeremiah Johnson of Fox 59 News, and we're going to be talking to an interdivision rival with the Houston Texans. That great interview will be coming up just shortly. But just to get you guys all caught up on what's been happening this first week of camp, there's been a lot of talk of running the football and stopping the run. I think Jim Irsay tweeted out a couple days ago that it was among the most important things that a football team could do, given there's no evidence for that at all. But that's what the direction the Colts seem to be headed in. Big doings in the wide receiver race. We saw Darius Hayward-Bay struggle and then rebound mightily the last couple of days. He's been making a good impact after dropping several passes in his early work. And then also Griff Whalen, to no one's surprise, is, as Coach Pagano said, sort of making himself indispensable and giving the Colts some really tough choices at wide receiver. So it's going to be continually fascinating to watch this offense develop as Andrew Luck gets into a groove in his second year with so many targets, both new and old. And then additionally, we're going to be looking at how the defense plays. Josh Chapman ripped through the line of scrimmage, made a big tackle for a loss in the backfield, though granted he's doing it against the Indy offensive line, so you never know how much of a signal that's going to be for the future. But we're seeing good things out of Greg Toller at cornerback as well. The reports on him are very strong. This is a guy that Colts fans are going to fall in love with as long as he can stay on the field. He's got a lot in common with Gerard Powers, and we all know that Powers played great. And in fact, it was his injury right before the Super Bowl that might have contributed to Drew Brees winning the MVP in that game and not Peyton Manning. Had Gerard Powers been healthy for the Super Bowl against New Orleans, who knows how that game could have ended up. The Indianapolis had a lot of injuries that night, and his was one of the biggest, as the Indy corners simply had no answer for the New Orleans wide receivers on that fateful evening. So as we get ready for now another week of training camp leading into the Week 1 preseason contest with Buffalo, lots of big things to keep our eyes on. Obviously, as always, you're going to want to keep your ear to the grindstone with the injury report. You can check out ColtsAuthority.com. Every day you're going to get daily updates with all of the best quotes and notes from the Colts training camp, as well as live reporting from our on-the-scene writers there. So be sure to check out Colts Authority. You're always going to find good stuff on there about training camp, and it's going to keep you posted on all the news.
Football fans, looking to get healthy this year? Now is the time, and I have the perfect place for you. Save 10% at onit.com/football radio. Exclusive PFC radio listeners save 10% off their order. That's onit.com, ONNIT.com/football radio.
And we're back with our first guest tonight. I'm here with JT Williams, host of Texans Central Radio. JT, thanks for being on tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. Hey, so why don't you first off tell the people how is it that you've gotten started doing a Texans radio show? Give us a little bit of your background, your resume in the football world.
Well, for one, basically I was kind of born into the football world, to be honest. My dad played football at Greenwich State University, and he wanted a son. And lo and behold, one day in September, they thought they were going to boy, and oops, out comes a girl. So I was kind of born into this. It was just something, that's just in me. And so instead of getting another linebacker, he got a cheerleader instead. And I pretty much danced and cheered growing up, so I've always been around football. And then after college, moved to Houston, started doing some work during the season and worked with the Texans, danced on a couple of professional teams as well. So it's just always been a part of my life. And I've also been a writer all my life, and just things have just evolved. And now I'm here with doing Texans Radio, so I'm just excited and blessed to have the opportunity.
That's awesome, JT. Where can people have found your work recently?
They could see, actually, I was just doing some Texans, representing the Texans during draft day with Bleacher Report during their draft day party. So if they go back, you can YouTube the footage and you can see me on there talking about the Texans and their picks. I also write about fashion. I live here in New York City now, so I also write about fashion. It's called eminentstyle.tumblr.com, and I'm also a feature contributor for a number of other works around. So I'm familiar everywhere. And you can also see my face on billboards across the world.
So that's absolutely fantastic. And since you were there for draft day with Houston, let's go right into talking about especially those first two picks for Houston in the draft this year. Obviously, Texans had a little bit of a rough go in free agency, but they had so many draft picks to work with in 2013 that it was a chance to really replenish some of the players that they lost. First of all, tell us about how DeAndre Hopkins has been performing early in camp. I seem to be reading good reviews about his play.
I am excited. This is one of the most exciting drafts for the Texans that they've had probably ever. Because it was the first time in 10 years that they had drafted a wide receiver. So the last time we had a receiver in the draft was Andre Johnson. So now we have DeAndre Hopkins, who I'm just so impressed by. He definitely, I look at DeAndre Hopkins and his progression since May when they were in the first rookie mini camps to when they came into training camp now. He is running so fast. He is, there were things that I felt that watching him play when he was in South Carolina, down in Clemson actually, is seeing him progress now that he's corrected. So, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, the starting job is for him to lose. Because he definitely has the talent and the skill set that's there. I think after he is comfortable enough with the playbook and the plays and actually get into the speed of an actual NFL game and see how he can handle that, the job is his to lose. I think that they have found a wonderful, wonderful protege for Andre Johnson.
Absolutely. And Andre Johnson, as we all know, is absolutely one of the best receivers in the NFL over the past decade. But it seemed like as the season wore on last year, teams really figured out, rolled a lot of coverage his way, because between Kevin Walter and Martin and Posey, it was really difficult for teams to have respect for anybody but Johnson. So if Johnson can stay healthy, we could be looking for big things from him with Hopkins on the other side, can't we?
Oh, definitely. I liken Andre Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins to basically you can take it, for example, if we look at Julio Jones and Roddy White, if the Texans can figure out how to accurately use and effectively use DeAndre and Andre, like the Falcons use Julio and Roddy, the Texans, the sky's the limit. I have hopes to see them here in New York come Super Bowl, because if they can effectively use those two, then there's really no stopping them. Because again, like you said, teams did figure them out last year, and they know that unfortunately, when you figure out a team like the Texans, and everything becomes so predictable, you're going to have more of those New England games. They're going to get to the top, and then they're going to fall. So I think once they get over that hump during the playoffs, again, like I said, the sky is the limit, but they have to figure out how to effectively use both receivers. And then I have to figure out how to take some of that pressure off of Andre, because I think he was, at 58.1% he was targeted last season. So that definitely has to, that has to drop. That can't happen again for them to go any deeper into the playoffs.
Absolutely. And as you look at the Texans last year, I know for me one of the big mysteries was what happened to the play of Matt Schaub down the stretch. I mean, through 5 or 6 weeks, we were talking about him as a potential MVP candidate. I had made an argument right after the Pro Bowl announcements came out that he was definitely the right choice for the third slot in the AFC over Andrew Luck. Then he came out and gets Luck in the last week against Indianapolis and just played terrible, and his numbers really suffered down the stretch. Now I could never figure out. The Texans never said he was hurt. I couldn't figure out whether it was just too much Andre Johnson and too little of anybody else, whether there was some kind of mystery injury, what was going on with his head. What in your opinion, was the issue with Matt Schaub down the stretch that caused the season to deteriorate so dramatically?
The way that it did. In my opinion, I think it was a mental thing. I think you have to take a look at the year before. He wasn't there. So in the sense, this was his first time. This was his first time, because the year before we had T.J. Yates coming off the bench. And now the spotlight was on Matt last year. In my personal opinion, I don't think mentally he was ready. I don't think it was an injury thing. I don't think it was anything but just a mental thing. And I felt like he allowed himself to become defeated mentally. And then, of course, once he became defeated mentally, he had to depend on Andre. But you can't always do that because Andre was hurt, half hurt. You have, half of the rest of our offense was hurt. And then we had so many, unfortunately, our secondary wasn't as strong as it should have been last year. So when you have all those things compounding and he's taking all this pressure that he was not ready and prepared for, of course, he allowed himself to become just mentally defeated. And I definitely think that is what happened. Now, my hope is that this year, after going through that, he's learned from that. He can look back at it. He can build off of it and say, okay, hey, I have to be strong and I have to be consistent throughout the season and throughout the playoffs as well. But I just don't think mentally he was ready. He wasn't there. He was not present in that game at all. And Andrew Luck ate him alive.
I have to ask, the Texans sort of rolled the dice on Schaub right as the season got started last year, signing him right corresponding with week 1 of the season. And obviously it gave the franchise a sense of stability all year. But on the other hand, you have to wonder if he would have commanded the same deal after the season that the Texans ended up giving him. How do you come down on their move to sort of roll the dice on Schaub and re-up him early? A good move. It certainly has locked them into him, so there's stability. But what's the payoff? What's the downside?
The payoff is the stability. The downside is, what if we see another performance like the Colts game last year? That's the thing. I was at that game, and I heard the fans, and they were wanting TJ. They were like, "Where's Jake? Where's anybody but him?" But Matt Schaub. And that's been kind of the consistency over the years that he's been there. It's been a very up and down thing. But I think when Matt Schaub is good, he's good. But when Matt Schaub is bad, Lord, does he think of the stadium? So I think
No,
that it's going to be the stability. There's a stability. We know that when Schaub is good, he's good. The downside of it is, can he be consistent?
That first interception he threw in the second Indianapolis game, he had his receiver wide open. It was one of those epic bootleg rollout kind of plays, and Vontae Davis was beat 6 ways to Sunday, and it should have been an 80-yard touchdown, and Schaub threw up an absolute duck that Vontae Davis ran underneath and took in for an interception. And Colts fans were all excited about the play of Davis, but, that throw was so bad, just about any corner would have picked it off. And it was shocking to me because I've always been a big Matt Schaub defender. I felt like he was, a borderline top 10 quarterback, and it really just did not look right the way that he threw that ball up there. So much so that I was wondering if he was hurt, but there's no evidence that there was anything wrong with him.
And there wasn't. Again, like I said, I think it was a mental thing. I think he allowed himself to be defeated mentally. He just could not recover. And because you didn't see, because even in his attempt to make adjustments after that interception, it just wasn't there. Things just were not complete. He was able to get, complete some passes that were so-so and okay, but they definitely were not up to the expectation level of someone that they had just, re-up on. So definitely, again, it's a mental thing. All we can do now is wait and watch and see if that's going to be, something that him being defeated mentally is going to be consistent, or him performing at the top of his game is going to be consistent. As a fan, you definitely hope that him being great and performing at the matchup that we know and expect to be great happens. But again, we won't know until, September 9th, what's going to happen. And it's basically time to wait and see. You don't want to get your hopes up, but you don't want to think so low. But I definitely think that with the addition of Hopkins on the other side, allowing him to have another target than just Andre will help him. So that's my hope, and that's what I hope to see this season.
Let's talk about the other major hole that was created in free agency that the Texans have filled in 2 different ways. Obviously, the loss of Glover Quinn was very significant. A very good player a lot of people don't recognize. Really made a big difference in that secondary, but he left via free agency, and the teams replaced him then with the combination of Ed Reed and DJ Swearinger. Talk about the safety for the Texans and what we should expect to see this year.
With Ed Ed Reed, he's recovering slowly but surely. He's saying that he'll be ready week 1, and we hope that he'll be ready week 1. I mean, he definitely brings in that veteran leadership. He definitely brings in what they need as far as that's concerned. So he definitely has that guidance and can educate guys on a lot of different things as far as the secondary is concerned, because Houston historically has always had a very weak secondary. And it's definitely just been a weakness that they've had since the team's inception. So DJ Swearinger, I hope, again, he's another one that you kind of hope that he can bring in a little bit more life and a little bit more of a pizzazz to them, because nobody's afraid of the Texas secondary. That's the biggest thing. I think that Ed Reed's presence will help the team have that, be able to bring that sense of fear to our opponents. Sure. But as of right now, nobody last season was afraid of Texas secondary, and that was a big reason for a lot of the turnovers. And look where they were ranked at secondary. I've never seen the Texas secondary ranked above 20, and that's giving them a lot. So I hope that Ed Reed's leadership skills come into play. I hope that his hip is going to be okay. He's been conditioning. He's been, running up and down the sidelines. He hasn't really spoken much to the media, but through the grapevine, he's been just saying that he will be ready by week 1. And I hope to see the Ed Reed that we've seen that play for the Ravens brings the same swagger to the Texans.
Absolutely. I mean, Bob McNair sort of chastised the team at the end of last season, didn't he, saying that they lacked mental toughness? Well, if Ed Reed can't bring you mental toughness, then I don't know who can. I don't know who you can bring in. Yeah. So how much of that goes back to Gary Kubiak? I mean, another guy. Texans rolled the dice on him, upped him before last year. And the Texans fans that I know, and I covered the AFC South last year, so I got to know a lot of Texans fans really well. And there are two pretty strong schools of thought. There are Texans fans that if you say word one against Gary Kubiak, they freak out. And then there's others that if you try to say Gary Kubiak is anything but a disaster, they freak out. So which school are you, and what should we make out of Gary Kubiak? Is he a latent genius, or is he a disaster waiting to happen?
I'm in the middle when it comes to Coach Kubiak. I have a lot of respect for him. I've met him, a gazillion times, been in a gazillion press conferences with him, and I'm definitely in the middle. I think sometimes instead of him just opening up and just going ham like I feel he should, you will hear him say, well, I didn't have them prepared. Well, that's obvious, Coach Kubiak, because we lost. So that was awesome. So it was pretty obvious there was something that wasn't prepared there at some point in time. And definitely, the teams take on the identity of a coach at times. And I think, again, when you lack that mental toughness and you just say, sometimes the common, I don't want to call it an excuse, but your reason for something happening is we weren't prepared, or we should have done this one. Well, that was obvious. Why didn't we make those adjustments during the game, or why didn't we make those adjustments, weeks prior to? Once you start seeing the same mistakes over and over and over. So I'm definitely in the middle on Coach Kubiak. I think that he has a lot of talent, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. And I definitely think that he has now learned how to delegate more. And you can see that with definitely when they brought in Wade Phillips and how the defense has improved. Because at first, we didn't see that. And it was so much that I felt was being placed on Coach Kubiak's shoulders that he shouldn't have. And I think that he needed to learn how to delegate more. And it's definitely shown because they've improved over time as he's delegated more.
What do you know about the health of Jonathan Joseph? I know I've been reading a lot of good things about his relationship with Kareem Jackson, who obviously had probably his best season as a pro last year, and I know that Joseph has been credited for that a lot. But as you said, the Texans secondary down the stretch was really hurting. Joseph's play was a big reason why, and it was mostly because he was hurt. He couldn't run right. We saw that against Green Bay when the injury first showed up. Aaron Rodgers threw for roughly 2 billion yards, I think was the exact total
right.
For what he threw for that night. So what do we know about Jonathan Joseph? Because I think his health is a big key for this team this year.
What I've been hearing about Jonathan Joseph is that he's progressing. Will he be ready by week 1? I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that, in the time off that he's definitely conditioning himself. So I don't know. I've heard pretty much what you've heard, that it's a toss of whether or not he'll be ready by week 1. Hopefully, I would like to see him back on the field at least by October. Mid-October, I would be happy with. That way we know that he's had enough time to fully rested, go through a training camp, and keep continuously condition and train with the Texans coaching staff. So, and I feel that makes everything I feel a little bit more comfortable because, they're being monitored by the team and not just by some trainer that they have during the off season.
Sure.
So, that's my hope, and hopefully he'll be back out there, because again, yes, if it was not for him, I would probably have eggs currying Jackson during the game because that one had to come a long way.
Yes. Yes, he has. So it sounds like good news on the Arian Foster front. I think Coop said today maybe they're hoping he's going to get out there on Sunday. I thought he really played well down the stretch and in the playoffs. He kind of had a rough start to the season, but he had really, down the stretch, he was not the reason why the Texans stopped scoring. He really did more than his part when they needed him. It was really the rest of the offense coming up short. What do you see from Foster now as he gets on in his career a little bit, and he's getting right into what should be his prime?
Again, and you took the words right out of my mouth. He's definitely coming to his prime, and I think that we will continue to see his production rise. Arian, when he's healthy, we already know he is unstoppable, and he definitely knows how to find his way to the end zone. He plays intelligently, and that's what makes me a very big fan of him. He plays smart. He doesn't just get out there and allow his body to be flung all over the field. He plays smart. He gets to the end zone, and he makes plays happen. So I definitely look to see him come more into his prime and continue to do those things. And hopefully that his performance will continue to motivate those around him. It's kind of hard. You can't – it's either A, you're going to be in the game and you're going to get motivated and you're going to play up to his level, or, I don't think that they need more cheerleaders on the sideline. I'm pretty sure that we don't need any more of those. So hopefully the rest of the offense will, take their level of play to his level of play. And again, like I said, if those things can happen, the Texans can be unstoppable this season. Their schedule is in their favor to do so. Yeah. They just have to make it happen.
In a really down division, the AFC South, a lot of people would say that Indianapolis and Houston are probably the two favorites. I think most people have Houston ahead by a nose, but a big factor is going to be their ability to come up to Indianapolis and win a game. Is it a thing in Houston? Are fans, are the team players aware of that ugly streak that the Texans have that they've never actually won in Indianapolis? Is it a big deal?
Aware of this. We are very well aware of this. I was there in 2009 when we had this interception. I was there for the Sage Rosenfeld helicopter. I was there when I saw Peyton Manning win a game in 27 seconds. A game that we had deleted, and we lost in 27 seconds. So, yes, the Indianapolis Colts and the Texans, that runs deep for me. I have many, many, many memories of those games. So it definitely is something that is in the back of the minds of Texas fans, and we're ready to go up there and win, and we're ready to, finally get over that hump, that ugly, again, like I said, very ugly streak, and ready to wipe the board clean and say, ha, 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 Indiana, we finally did it.
Well, you had to feel like if you weren't going to win in 2011 and in 2012, really everything was set up for Houston to win that last game of last season. I was at both of those games, and really remarkable that the Texans didn't come through in either one when they really needed wins in both cases. When you look at Houston, what do you see as the biggest X factor for whether this team is a really elite team, say maybe a 12 or 13 win team, up there with the top teams in the conference, which I think we all think will probably be New England and Denver, or if they're more, sort of in the back of the pack of potential playoff teams around 9 or 10 wins? What's going to make the difference for those extra 2 or 3 wins to really propel them forward?
Again, I realistically speaking, I see the Texans going 11-5.
Okay.
And if they realistically can go 11-5 and get into the dance, I'm happy. I just want them to get their ticket to the dance. So
it's all a crapshoot at that point anyway. Once you make the playoffs, anything can happen.
Once you make the playoffs, anything can happen. So
Baltimore won last year for crying out loud.
Exactly. I really see them going 11-5, and just looking at, first of all, we're not sure if Andre is going to hold up all season. If Andre can hold up all season, great. That may give us that extra 1 or 2 more wins, because I think down the stretch, as he and DeAndre get more comfortable playing with each other, and the teams see them on each side, and they can't figure out what the Texans are going to do, and they don't become predictable, that's going to be a key for them going those extra 1 or 2 wins that may get them to the 12-4, 13-3. The secondary, Dalvin Joseph comes back and he's healthy. If we have Kareem Jackson, who doesn't get burnt this season, right? Those are going to be the things. It's going to be the little things. It's for the Texans, the wins are going to be the details. And, hopefully they can get over this hump. And, again, it's going to be on both sides of the ball, not just on the defensive side, but on the offensive side. And if they can pay attention to the details and stay healthy throughout the season, then down the stretch, those extra 1 or 2 wins should come naturally. But, again, as you say, the script has been written into their favor.
Well, listen, JT, I want to thank you so much for this evening, for this interview. We've talked a lot about everything with the Texans. We haven't even gotten to arguably the best player in football, J.J. Watt. But before we go tonight, can you just give everybody one more crack at where they can find you, your writing, your show, if you're on Twitter? Give yourself a good plug for where my listeners can find your work all season long.
Okay, your listeners can find me all season long via Twitter. I am at Texans Central Radio, which is Twitter. It is Texans Central PF. They can find me there all day, every day, talking about all things Texans. And they can also find me at The Realist, and that's TheRealest007, which is also on Twitter. And I'm pretty much on Twitter all day, all night. We can talk. If one talk Texans, we can talk Texans. One talk Texans rivalries, we can talk Texans rivalries. I'm there.
All right. Well, you're absolutely fantastic. Thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you as soon as the season gets underway. Have a good night.
Awesome.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central Radio Network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
And we're back with our second guest tonight, Jeremiah Johnson from Fox 59. You can follow him on Twitter at JJFox59Sports. How are you doing tonight, brother? What's going on?
Pretty good. 1 week of Colts training camp, actually technically 5 days to be exact, and I guess before long we'll be talking about games.
All right, so 1 week in at beautiful Anderson, Indiana. What's your biggest takeaway so far from the goings-on up there?
Actually, just the way some of the young Colts have kind of carried themselves, and I guess specifically Andrew Luck. Everyone always talks about the difference between a first year and a second year and the progression you make, but last year at this time, every other day he had to deal with questions about Peyton Manning and how he was going to, fill his shoes, and he was still trying to learn how to be a professional, and he was trying to learn a new offense, and we didn't see a lot of personality out of him off the field, and on the field, obviously he learned a lot and he progressed nicely, but just being around him, and today during his interview session, I just got the feeling that he seems so much more at peace with, who he is and where he's at and what he's doing, and I just noticed such a progression from year one to year two for Andrew Luck.
Well, that's encouraging to hear. I know last year I always felt when I spoke with him, they was always very guarded. He was always trying not to necessarily not make a mistake in an interview, but
right.
Just trying to be very conservative. So it's great to hear that a little more of that personality's coming out. And I do imagine
a little bit at a time, and he's still got a long ways to go before he's going to be on the all-interview team. But he's smiling a lot more, and I just feel like he's. I asked him today about whether as a quarterback you're naturally a leader, but year two now, does he feel like he's actually one of the leaders of the team? And he said that he thinks that Reggie Wayne is still the leader of the offense, but you can tell out there on the field that he's kind of in charge of what's going on out there. I think that's what, if you're a Colts fan, you'd like to see.
I think if Abe Lincoln, Napoleon, and Winston Churchill were in a room, Reggie Wayne would still probably be the leader. Something tells me that's just in his DNA a little bit to take over that situation. Do you get the sense from the other players that they are very comfortable with him? I mean, obviously, all of the amazing comebacks last year must have built some degree of confidence and trust in him. How do you see the team coming together and gelling together emotionally in the first week or so?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it's a little similar to last year in that there are so many new players. And so while they had such a new roster last year, there was a lot of turnover to that roster. Obviously, there are some holdovers, But there are some new guys to work in. The most notably on offense, I think, is getting Darius Hayward-Bay up to speed and getting him kind of in sync with Andrew Luck. And that's going to take a little bit of time, but then you notice a lot of other second-year guys. I mean, when you think back to what Ryan Erickson was able to do in that draft last year, obviously Andrew Luck was kind of an easy pick, but, both the tight ends, Kobe Fleener, Dwayne Allen, and then T.Y. Hilton, I mean, they're going to be some of Andrew Luck's biggest targets for years to come, and they all came in at the same time.
I wanted to ask you, because you're one of my favorite follows on Twitter. I have a secret favorites list of people that I actually pay attention to, and then there's everybody else in the world, and you're on that list, and you're one of the people that I really enjoy following, and mostly because I always feel like your passion really comes out for things. Like, I get the sense that you care. You know what I mean? Like, you actually care about local sports, which is fantastic. Too rare sometimes, but just absolutely great to see. That was an emotional year last year. For anybody that loves Indianapolis, lots of emotions, from losing Peyton to obviously all the Chuck Pagano drama, to the ridiculous comebacks, to making the playoffs, the ups, the downs. Looking back on it all, how do you feel now as we start to move into year 2 away from the Peyton Manning era? Difficult transition, I think, for all of us, for anybody that cared about Colts football before. How do you feel about things, about this team, just you personally?
I just think that last year was so much uncertainty, and this team had no identity last year, and now this team does have an identity. So I think that the foundation was laid last year. They have such a season to build on, and I almost worry a little bit about the expectations perhaps going to be too high this year. But I don't think that the players have any of that kind of fear. It's just sort of a perception that among Colts fans have been so good for so long. They had the one bad year, and then it's like immediately they pick up and have 11-5 playoff type season. And now I think there may be some unrealistic expectations that this will be another run of 10 or 12 win seasons for the next 8 years. And I think people need to really appreciate what was able to happen last year. It was magical. And, sometimes in the media we can glorify things, but I mean, that was all legit, what was actually happening out there. And so I think that's one thing just to keep an eye on. I don't think this is a Super Bowl team just yet. And I saw somebody commenting yesterday, one of the national writers, that they could be the best team in the AFC next year, and this year they're still building a little bit. So I think that's something to keep in mind.
And you can't spend any time around them at all, just as an organization now, and not just sense that, not to be crude, but Chuck Pagano's got a pair. I mean, this guy just absolutely seems to embrace the expectations. He wanted to kind of throw it in everybody's face that nobody thought the team would be very good last year. He's got shirts made up with them, hoisting Lombardi trophies. There's no shying away. There's no lowering expectations from Chuck Pagano. He's taking everything on just full head of steam and saying, we're going to go out and win this thing. And you got to admire the chutzpah of the whole of him, if nothing else.
Yeah, in a way, kind of, not sure all your listeners will understand this, but there are some similarities the way he carries himself to Frank Vogel, who's the Pacers head coach. I mean, he came in from day one when he took over for Coach O'Brien and just kind of picked up a team that was kind of in the middle of just mediocrity and said, this is a team that could be among the best in the Eastern Conference. And, they were an 8th seed, I think, against the Bulls that first year, and he's like, we can beat this team. Now, it didn't happen, but every time you talk to him, he elicits so much, he puts in so much confidence, and I think that can't help but rub off. At times you can think it's maybe hokey or it's a little unrealistic, so maybe that it wears off. But if you can get the guys to really believe it, then it works. And I think that, obviously Coach Pagano, with what he went through last year, they were inspired. But I think just assuming, and as everyone hopes, that this is just a normal football only season, I think Coach Pagano has one of those skills that not everyone has. He's a master motivator, and I think that, with what he says, I think that he's got guys believing that there's no reason why they shouldn't be shooting for the Super Bowl. Do I expect it to happen? Probably not this year. I mean, I think that's a little unrealistic. As the Ravens showed last year, I don't think that you get into the playoffs and anything can happen, and he talks about that a lot, that you get into the dance and that, you never know. So get into the playoffs, and he talks about winning the division, and that gets you in the best position. And then you never know what will happen.
I always feel like part of the reason why the sort of raw stuff works for him so well and doesn't really come off as cheesy is because he's also such a very good teacher. There's a lot of things that go into being a head coach, and people only usually see the 60 minutes on Sunday. This man's a very skilled teacher, and he really exudes legitimate concern and caring. And I think his players sense that, and that makes sort of the fiery side resonate a lot better with them. It's not an act. I mean, the guy really does care about them as people, and he really just does care about excellence and winning. And it's gone a long way towards transforming the face of the franchise.
Yeah, and I don't think that I think there's a good chance Reggie Wayne is not in Indianapolis if any other coach besides Chuck Pagano was hired. If you think back to their roots back at the University of Miami, and I don't know how many offers Reggie had in his free agency, and it's safe to say he had some, and he's never really wanted to talk about that, but he definitely had a chance to go somewhere else, and maybe he didn't get the big money offers that he was looking for, and that made it easier to come back to Indianapolis. But I think that Coach Pagano, among the first calls he made was to Reggie Wayne saying, we're going to do something here, and I want you to be a part of it. And if that's coming from somebody else, that's probably not going to happen. But Reggie Wayne believed in Chuck Pagano, and then kind of everything else fell into place. So with all the stops that Pagano has made, that's why I felt so bad for what happened to him last year. Everything was the guy that, his bio every year or two, he was moving around to a different city.
Right.
And,
exactly.
20-some years in, he gets his chance to be a head coach, and this is what happens. So, but with that background, he's certainly learned a lot about football, and he's learned a lot about motivating, and he's been a great teacher. So he obviously has a great background and to be able to do things like this.
You make a really good point about Reggie, and talking to him the day they hired Chuck Pagano, you could see his eyes just sort of light up, like he was really excited about the hire. And there were rumors that Houston was possibly the team that could have gotten him. And I'm telling you, that Houston offense, had Reggie Wayne been on the other side of Andre Johnson instead of Kevin Walter, they might have been hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. So there's a very good chance that Pagano kept the Super Bowl out of the division. So now let's talk a little bit about what you've seen on the defense so far. I know fans are really concerned. There's been obviously a huge overhaul, lots of new faces, lots of new players. Give us one or two guys that you feel have really stood out to you in the first few days.
Jarrell Freeman's a guy that no one thought going into last year that, who was going to be the guy in the middle, and it was probably Pat Anger, and this is a guy that's still came out of nowhere, had a great season, and I think he's still making plays on the defensive end. I think also that the cornerback position is one that's upgraded. Vontae Davis is kind of a guy that came in and took a while to kind of get used to the Colts system, but I think he's playing with a lot more confidence, and I think he's going to be a guy that's going to prove worthy of trading a second-round pick for. And Greg Toller's been injured a little bit. He got a kind of a minor concussion yesterday. They're not too worried about it, but I think he does present a good option on the other side. So they enter the season with, a couple of solid defensive backs in cornerbacks as well. So haven't seen a lot out of Laurent Lansing, and actually Antoine Bethea missed a couple of days by having a baby. So we haven't seen a lot of the safeties, but I think right now the cornerback is one position that has been upgraded because you have Darius Butler and Cassius Vaughn who, filled in admirably in spots and injury replacements last year that are going to be kind of fighting for the third corner spot. So if those guys are your third corners and they're there, if there's an injury to the starters, that's a good situation for the Colts.
Well, yeah, and in a lot of ways they can't really do much worse than they did last year on defense. There were a lot of holes, so the new players don't have to be fantastic. They just need to be a little bit better, and you're going to see a team that's a lot more formidable and will hopefully play a little bit better on the defensive side of the ball. So, hey, I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight. Is there anything you'd like to plug real quick? I know everybody can see on Fox 59, on Twitter, at JJFox59 Sports. Absolutely, you're a great follow. Anything else you got going on? Any interviews you want to push? We're at Colts camp every single day. So every night we kind of recap what's been going on, and we've got on Fox 59 we have 25-minute shows on Friday nights and Sunday nights, and obviously this time of year those are going to be 80% Colts. So if you're in the market, you can check it out on Fox 59, and if you guys are
any of the listeners are out of the country, you go to fox59.com and we have live streaming of our newscasts as well. So, our main day-to-day stuff is, happening within the newscast, but then Friday nights at 10:35 and Sunday nights at 10:35 are extended sports shows. Friday nights get to high school football craziness at the end of August, but the next couple of weeks we'll be talking a lot about the Colts as well.
Well, that's fantastic, Jeremiah. I want to thank you for coming on. And once again, remind everybody, this is a great guy to follow for all things Indiana sports. Exudes passion, professionalism all the time. One of my absolute favorite follows. So catch all of his work on TV, on the internet, wherever you can find it. If you're local, turn on Fox 59 and check him out all throughout Colts camp. Thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Football fans, looking to get healthy this year? Now is the time, and I have the perfect place for you. Save 10% at onit.com/football radio. Exclusive PFC radio listeners save 10% off their order. That's onit.com, ONNIT.com/football radio.
Friends, what have we learned tonight? I think we've learned that the new Texans radio show is going to be fantastic. I think we've learned that Indianapolis is lucky to have such a great sports voice and Jeremiah Johnson. I think we've learned that the Colts have a serious corner on the market when it comes to passion from the front office. Good stuff from all of our guests tonight. Hey, I want to give you guys some shameless plugs for a couple of events that are upcoming. First, Saturday night at the Colts Grill, downtown Indianapolis. There will be a panel discussion hosted by Tyler Brooke. I'm going to be there. George Brimmer, Derek Schultz, Jersey Johnny, who you heard a couple weeks ago, and the Dean of Indianapolis sports coverage, Mike Chappell, will be there. We'll be talking Colts. We'll be answering your questions. Come down, grab something to eat, grab a drink. It's going to be a real good time. Colts Grill, 7 p.m. Saturday night. Don't miss it. The last one we did a few months ago was fantastic. Listen, if you can't learn something from Mike Chappell, there's nothing I can do for you. He is absolutely a brilliant man. I love listening to him talk Colts. So that will be a great thing to check out. Another upcoming event, August 24th in Zionsville at Black Dog Books. I will be signing books together with my wife, Deborah. We both have a couple of books out. You guys probably have known my books for some time. Blue Blood, Tales of Glory of the Indianapolis Colts has been out for several years. Invincible Indiana is my novel. But my wife is also an author, and she has 2 fantastic young adult novels out. One is called The Book of Sight. They're part of a series, the Book of Sight series, and her second book, The Broken Circle. You can find all of our books on MadisonHousePublishing.com, Amazon.com. Just look up Nate or Deb Dunlevy, Dunlevy. But come out to Black Dog Books the 24th in Zionsville from 12 to 1:30. We'll be signing books out there together. We'll be happy to talk football with you. It's the night before the Colts' 3rd preseason game against Cleveland, so we'll be there that night as well. But make sure you come on out to Zionsville at Black Dog Books and check out the book signing. All right, guys, thank you very much. We're going to be counting down to the first preseason game next week. We're going to talk with some people quite knowledgeable about the Buffalo Bills, and we'll get ready to dig into the first preseason game, and my co-host Tyler will be back with us. Thank you all very much. Have a good night, and go Horse.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.